People at Marvel. Asking Spider-Man at the beginning. Chapter 1. That's right, I'm Spider-Man, a normal high school student. Peter Parker nestled on the sofa at home, watching the video of the press conference playing on the TV and only felt that he was cool. His identity as Spider-Man has been announced for 3 months, and in these 3 months, he has experienced an unprecedented life. Just like a superstar. People in the school would scream when they saw him, and even chase him to ask some questions about superheroes. Unable to avoid these fanatical fans, he had no choice but to hide at home to study. But staying at home will always have a lot of media coming to the door. After all, everyone wants to know about the legendary Superman. Although this life is different from the previous 10 years to Peter Parker enjoys it very much, there will still be some troubles in his spare time, such as their doorbell being broken again, and his home phone being burst again. Is this the consequence of being famous but not hiding his address? Peter Parker doesn't know, but it's clearly not important. Spider-Man, do you think you're the only superhero in the world? A voice sounded behind the sofa. Peter Parker turned his head on the back of the sofa, and saw a one-eyed bald man. Who are you? Peter Parker asked with interest. Is this bald man also a media? How did he get in? Peter Parker was curious. I'm Nick Fury, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. The one-eyed bald man sat down on the sofa. I want to talk to you about the Avengers. Quote. The Avengers. Is it a boy group? Which entertainment company are you? S.H.I.E.L.D. How does the name compete with the name of INR and NSA? Peter Parker didn't feel any danger, he even found it funny. But can you tell me how you got in? Don't be nervous. Nick Fury comforted, though he didn't see tension in this newborn high school teenager who wasn't afraid of tigers. It doesn't matter how I got in. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not an entertainment company, its full name is the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, and I am also the director. Unlike INR and NSA, we do not serve Country M, but are loyal to the 5 major United Nations. And the Avengers aren't a boy group, it's a team built for superheroes around the world. We need you to join us. Quote. Peter Parker listened interestingly, but apparently not interested in this fake-sounding team. Although I think what you said is interesting, but I'm just a normal high school student, and I'm not interested in these things. Ignoring Peter Parker's refusal, Nick Fury continued to talk. We are responsible for studying and solving supernatural phenomena around the world, and supernatural of course requires superhumans to solve them, right? Besides, in addition to you, there are vampires, werewolves and other superhuman existences, and we will also pay you. Do you really not consider joining us? Peter Parker didn't expect that there were so many superhumans in the world, all mutated after being bitten by some animals like him. But the matter of remuneration, with his fame, what do you want to do? Thinking about touching his chin, it's good, it's interesting, then I'll consider it. However, you should know that my parents died early, and I may have to ask for the consent of other relatives. I think they'll agree, because your father used to be my subordinate. Peter Parker, who was still looking awe-inspiring, raised his eyes flickering. You know my father. Nick Fury smiled. Yes, it's true. Peter Parker looked solemn. It seems that he has to re-examine this matter, but he has not been baptized by fighting alongside other superheroes, and naturally prefers to be alone and refuse to cooperate with others. On the ground, there was a cold mechanical male voice in his ears. First question. Whose clone was Dr. Jackal created by Ben Reilly? A. Nick Fury. B. Peter Parker. C. Iron Man. D. Captain America. Please answer. The 2 of them saw a floating blue transparent light screen suddenly appear in the void of the living room, and they both showed surprised looks. What is it? Did you do it? Peter Parker raised his chin towards Nick Fury. Nick Fury frowned. No, not me. Peter Parker nodded, then cut off the power to see what to do with this thing. Thinking that Peter Parker turned off the electric gate of his house, but this light screen was still suspended in the room, which was very strange. Miraculous, it doesn't disappear when the power is cut off. One of the 2 is an inhuman being in itself, and the other has seen too many supernatural phenomena, and quickly recovers his calm state of mind. It doesn't look like a prank. Peter Parker looked at Nick Fury. Hey, Bald, do you know everyone up here? Quote. Bald. Nick Fury asked rhetorically with a smile. Leave this alone. Needless to say, the first two people above are you and me, and the latter two are also affiliated with the Avengers and are two very powerful superheroes. Sounds interesting. It's better for us to analyze this problem. Anyway, idle and idle, maybe there will be any reward for answering correctly. Have you ever thought about what if you answered incorrectly? The mechanical voice sounded again in time. Answer wrong once, reduce the life of the respondent by 1 year. Answer correctly once and reward artifact weapon drawings. Quote. Lifespan. Can this ethereal thing really be measured in time? What's more, how do you know that life has been taken? And what is the artifact weapon? A litany of questions appeared in Peter Parker's mind. Together, these questions seemed to tell him that it was a scam, but at the same time a scam that could not be ignored. Who would create such a scam? What is the purpose of creating a scam? Peter Parker doesn't know. What is the prescribed answering time? 1 day. Nick Fury also had questions in his head, but he could ask more things that were beneficial to him. There is no time to answer the question, and the time for answering the question is infinite, but in the process of answering the question, you must not leave this house for half a step, otherwise it will be regarded as a wrong answer. Take punitive measures now. Quote. It seems that this thing has an iron heart to ask the two to answer the question, but why is that? Peter Parker shrugged. It looks like we have to answer the question. My family doesn't have that much to eat. The atmosphere gradually became dignified. Peter Parker again posed the question, hey, Bald, do you know Dr. Jackal then? I don't know, but it's probably a bad guy. How do you know it's a bad person? Peter Parker was not convinced. The jackal, an animal, is born cunning and lacks strength to specialize in robbery and theft. How is it not a bad person? Nick Fury asked rhetorically. If it's just taken out of context, is the bad name bad? Nick Fury didn't want to see the same thing as a child. The priority is not to argue about this, but to answer the question, right? Although Peter Parker disdained the idea of this middle-aged bald uncle, the priority was indeed to solve this strange light screen problem. Judging from the stem, the characters and conditions are known. Shut up, you. Nick Fury resisted the thought of punching the bare child. Good, good, I analyze carefully. These 4 people, I didn't know any of them before today. Peter Parker stole a glance at Nick Fury. Well, go ahead. This thing won't be so strange, and by common sense, I think the answer is myself. Do you think this strange light screen problem that suddenly appeared was what made you pick someone you knew? Nick Fury laughed angrily. I'm the answerer, right? Answer. What is naturally up to me to decide, anyway, punishment will also come to me, you care what I choose. Peter Parker wants to go against Nick Fury, that's it, whatever he does. Nick Fury. Well, I don't care about you. Peter Parker smiled. Isn't that a year of life? He was curious about how this thing could take away such an indescribable ethereal thing as life. I choose B, Peter Parker handsome. Narcissist. Answer. Nick Fury was hoping that this thing would teach this little furry boy a lesson, and Peter Parker was looking forward to seeing how life was unwittingly taken away by God. Correct. The sound of machinery sounded, and both of them were a little disappointed. What a blessing, little furry boy. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. He still hoped that the child would be safe and alive. Thank you, bald uncle. There is no doubt that I am lucky. The two only cared about mixing their mouths, and after a while, they found the USB disk floating in the void in the light screen. The two looked at each other, not knowing when this thing appeared quietly. Peter Parker took the USB drive, and the mechanical sound sounded again. The reward has been successfully distributed. Peter Parker opened the electric gate of his house and sat down in front of the computer. And Nick Fury is still sitting on the sofa. After all, the little furry boy said that the answerer is him, and the punishment is also him, so the reward naturally belongs to him alone. Hey, bald uncle. Let's just take a look at what's weird in the USB drive. Nick Fury was stunned, and then walked over with a smile. What a duplicitous little furry boy. Plug the USB stick into the computer, and soon a drawing of a light cannon appears on the screen. Uncle Bald, I don't understand, is this thing good or bad? Nick Fury exhaled deeply. This light cannon is very advanced, at least 3 degrees more advanced than the light cannon developed by S.H.I.E.L.D. Peter Parker showed a surprised look. Take the liberty to ask, how powerful is your shield? Can I conjure a USB flash drive through the air? Quote. Can't. The most advanced organization in the world is us. Peter Parker was even more shocked. That. This thing can't be alien, right? Are there really aliens in the distant universe? This can tell you accurately, yes, there are really aliens in the universe, and their civilization is much more advanced than Earth. I know an alien called the Overlord of the universe. This is amazing. So do you want to consider joining us with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Join the Avengers. Nick Fury saw the stitches. Then think about it. But this thing is really powerful. I have seen countless paranormal phenomena and superhumans, and none of them can do this. Then I will join you. With my joining, I will definitely be able to catch up with alien civilizations. Peter Parker raised his chin. Nick Fury smiled. Sure enough, it was a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers, and a confident teenager in middle too. Suddenly, all the waiters in the house were extinguished, and both of them stood up vigilantly and looked around. At this time, a huge light screen lit up in the center of the house. Images soon appeared on the light screen. In the dirty sewers, a pointy-eared monster with green all over was tinkering with something in front of a machine. Oh my god, what is this? Slime. Peter Parker exclaimed. Nick Fury was speechless. I think this should be the Dr. Jackal in the question. Of course I know. Peter Parker continued to look at the light screen. Slime. Dr. Jackal turned around, the smile on his face twisted terribly, and he walked quickly in one direction. After taking a few steps, he stopped, and with Dr. Jackal's gaze, the light screen presented the picture that Dr. Jackal saw. A man dressed in red is connected by countless wires, and his clothes have spider patterns on them. This. Peter Parker thought for a moment of name in question. Is this Ben Reilly? My clone. Most likely. Nick Fury answered in the affirmative. Hey bald uncle, do you say I'm powerful or he? Then I'll be honest, strictly speaking, Dr. Jackal is modeled after your Ben Reilly, and will definitely add more useful things to your foundation, so I think he is more powerful. Peter Parker doesn't think there is anything, it's powerful, it's a fact, who makes him inferior to others. So sometimes, the fake is better than the real one, and the substitute is better than the original. With such emotion, the light screen suddenly pierced the sound, and it turned out that Dr. Jackal spoke, later. Just call you Scarlet Spider. Quote. The light screen returned to darkness again, and after a while, it lit up again. Who are you? Peter Parker in the picture is sitting by the lake and asking. You don't need to know who I am. The opposite answered, Peter Parker in the picture does not know him, but Peter Parker outside the picture does. Isn't this the Scarlet Spider just now? But Peter Parker in the picture was obviously curious about the identity of the other party and wanted to get closer, but the Scarlet Spider spewed out its cobwebs and flew to the roof of the opposite building. You'll do this too? Peter Parker was amazed. Do you think you're the only one in the world who has been bitten by a radiation spider? Peter Parker also sprayed a spider web and flew to the roof, and just wanted to get closer, but was stopped by the Scarlet Spider's sharp knife. You actually have a sharp knife. Peter Parker was even more surprised. Don't you have one? Scarlet Spider asked. Nope. Nick Fury winked at Peter Parker. Look, the clone is even greater. Peter Parker rolled his eyes. Okay, powerful. The light screen changed the picture again, this time to a place similar to a laboratory. There is a mechanical octopus in the center of the laboratory, and the head of the octopus is still human. Oh my god, what is this? Peter Parker exclaimed. In the light screen, Scarlet Spider and Peter Parker fight side by side to defeat the mechanical octopus. The light screen went out, and this time it didn't light up again. After reading this, I found that the strength of the team does not seem to be so bad, so I will join you. Peter Parker really wants to join the Avengers at this moment. What do you think is on the light screen? Nick Fury asked. Isn't that the scene of the question we answered? Peter Parker was puzzled. No, since there is a correct answer to the question, existence is reasonable. Peter Parker somewhat understood. You mean that this thing is real, either it has already happened and we don't know, or it hasn't happened yet. Peter Parker spoke a little fast. In the light screen, I fought side by side with the Scarlet Spider, but this obviously did not happen, so the content on the light screen is the future. Nick Fury nodded. I think so too. Then let's quickly study the things in the light screen. and we can get a glimpse of how difficult it is to get a glimpse of the future. Nick Fury agreed, and began to analyze what was in the light screen. First of all, Dr. Jackal, although I don't know why he made your clone, but obviously the Scarlet Spider is beautiful, and he is not. Slimes look so strange, will there be many such disgusting existences in the future? Nick Fury put forward another point. After seeing a mechanical octopus, it is also very strange, so there is a great possibility that there will indeed be many such existences in the future. Then this will definitely cause problems for you and me in the future. Peter Parker frowned. Okay, there is only so much to analyze, there is nothing else to say, I'm going to sleep, I won't leave you to eat, please. Nick Fury knew that Peter Parker was rushing people, and smiled. He really should go back. What happened today is a little strange, he has to go back to the bureau to study and research. Wait for my next visit. After saying that, he turned and left. Hey, bald uncle. Peter Parker stopped him. Nick Fury turned around, was smashed in the face by something, reached out to catch it, and found that it was a USB flash drive. This. Peter Parker turned his head and walked into the bedroom. Give it to you, you will take it, study it and remember to show me. Nick Fury clenched the USB drive. Definitely. Quote. Nick Fury came and went, quickly returned to SHIELD headquarters, and immediately entered the weapons research laboratory. Copy the things in the USB drive on the data analysis table. Nick Fury is a little nervous. I don't know if this thing is true or fake. Can it really be developed? If this light cannon is developed, its power is unimaginable. Soon the data analysis was presented on the screen. All the data was normal. The function and power budget and the analysis results were telling Nick Fury that this light cannon could really be developed and was really powerful. Nick Fury took a deep breath and sent the drawings to the weapon-making laboratory, and the drawings in hand were fools who didn't make them. Finally had free time to take a breath, Nick Fury was afraid when he remembered it, and a cold sweat broke out behind his back. What is this thing? How could it have such a heaven-defying ability? Not only can he quietly appear in Peter Parker's house, but he also has ultra-advanced weapon drawings, and even can glimpse the future. If you go against this thing, the consequences are unimaginable. Once people get busy, time flies, and while Nick Fury is working on a light cannon with Phil Coulson, Maria Hill brings Peter Parker in. Director, Peter Parker is coming to visit. Nick Fury looked up from the drawings. Why are you here? It's been a month, Uncle, can't I come and see how the weapons are being developed? Peter Parker rolled his eyes. Of course. Nick Fury gave way to Peter Parker. How? This stuff studied. The progress is very smooth, the steps given by the drawings are very clear. I believe it will not be long before this light cannon can be present. Don't just develop it, don't live in this world, otherwise it's a difficult battle. The two were talking and laughing, but the next second the laughter at the corners of their mouths froze, because the sound of that thing pierced their ears again. This time I started to answer. The scope of the answer. Within the enchantment, the wrong answer will reduce the lifespan by 1 year, and the correct answer will reward 1 ton of mithril silver. Second question. Which superhero flew to Sokka Star to become a gladiator champion? A. Spider-Man. B. Iron Man. C. Hulk. D. Hawkeye. Please answer. Quote. Here it is again. Peter Parker. Does it only come when we get together? I knew I wouldn't come to you. It's not necessarily a bad thing. At best, at least we can know things about the future, and the more we know, the better it will be for us. Okay, who are the people on this question? The other 3 are also members of the Avengers. You didn't say anything useful either. Peter Parker rolled his eyes again. Where's Sokka Star? Do you know? Quote. I don't know, this is probably a planet outside the solar system, and with the current level of space research, it is not possible to go to planets outside the solar system. Then it's called alien. Peter Parker touched his chin. Gladiator. Do you need that kind of burly and tall person? Are there any eligible people in this option? Quote. Yes. Hulk, burly and tall, fits the criteria. But you can actually become a gladiator, right? Do gladiators have to be tall and burly? Nick Fury disagreed with Peter Parker's idea. You questioned me like this last time, otherwise you can analyze more clues. Nick Fury frowned. Can't. Since you can't listen to me, you have to trust my vision and luck. But this is no small joke. The punishment is life. Don't worry, when the time comes to reduce your life expectancy by 1 year, you can still study how to reduce it. It is also of research value, isn't it? Nick Fury was angry with Peter Parker and had nothing to say. I choose C. Hulk. Peter Parker took the opportunity to answer. All four held their breath, and the next moment, answer correct. Rewards have been distributed. Quote. Breathe a sigh of relief, everyone remembered the question of rewards. A ton of mithril silver. Where is it? The weapon research room was large enough, and the enchantment happened to cover the entire weapon research room, and several people walked around quickly, and soon found a corner of the metal. That's a ton. The so-called mithril silver. Seeing a pile of metal in the corner, Nick Fury's face was full of shock. That doesn't make sense. Peter Parker was also stunned. One of the two is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., who knows a lot about supernatural or advanced technology. The other is also a science and technology-related college student. In the parallel world, Peter Parker can establish Parker Industry, and his scientific knowledge is not low. So when they saw this mithril silver, both realized that there could not be a ton of this metal. The pile of metal in the corner of the wall is not enough to reach people's knees, and it is only 500 or 600 pounds to die. You have superpowers, don't you? You go up and try it and carry him to the instrument to measure the weight. Nick Fury ordered. Okay. Although Peter Parker didn't like being ordered, his thirst for knowledge made him eagerly walk over and try to transport all these mithril silvers. His hands were placed on the left and right sides of mithril and then forced. Originally, according to Peter Parker's idea, these mithril silver would be easily carried by him. After all, he had been a speeding train at the moment, and there was naturally no need to worry about strength. But when Peter Parker tried to carry it, the mithril seemed to have such a huge weight that he couldn't lift it at all. Careless. Peter Parker raised his eyebrows and said unexpectedly. What's wrong? You can even block the moving train. Don't tell me you can't carry hundreds of pounds. Hurry up and mess with FAC. Nick Fury said as he habitually said a mantra. There's something wrong with these mithril silver. I do feel like there is a ton. As Peter Parker spoke, he began to increase his strength, and finally increased his strength to a ton or so before picking up mithril silver. This made him more certain that these mithril were indeed a ton of weight. You shouldn't be bluffing me. Whether there is a ton of these things, just put it on the instrument and measure it. Nick Fury walked up to the weight instrument, activated the instrument, and motioned for Parker to place mithril on it. But seeing Peter Parker's tense muscles, Nick Fury realized that this young man should not be joking with himself. The instrument is very expensive, in case it cannot bear a ton of weight. If it is damaged, it will have to be purchased by S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. So out of a cautious attitude, Nick Fury asked Agent Fitz, you always stay in the laboratory. If this mithril really weighs a ton, can the instrument measure it without damaging it? If there's really a ton of weight, why would you measure it? Fitz shrugged, a little confused by Nick Fury's logic. I mean if this mithril weighs a ton, mess with Falca. Nick Fury said impatiently. Science has no ifs. Fitz spread his hands and said helplessly, how much weight there is, I always have to test to know. If you are worried about the load-bearing problem of the instrument, I can only say that you think too much. God, your last half of the sentence, you will have said it earlier. Nick Fury gave Fitz a blank look, feeling more and more that he was not very suitable for dealing with scientists. Peter Parker is not a scientist, he can only be regarded as knowing scientific knowledge, but because of the reason for his words, it is no better if he does not ride Fitz. I put it on. Peter Parker reminded, and then placed mithril on the measuring instrument. In the gaze of the three people, the numerical value of the measuring instrument that could be accurate to the nanometer level increased, which was extremely fast, and the kung fu had soared to more than 900 in the blink of an eye. This thing can have more than 900 pounds. Nick Fury pointed at mithril and shouted like a ghost. It's still growing. Fitz said, pointing to the numbers on the instrument. At the time of the conversation, the weight of mithril had already exceeded 900, directly climbing to more than 990. But at this moment, the value on the instrument suddenly stopped, followed by re-zeroing, regrowing, and then re-zeroing. Sorry director, the instrument is broken. Fitz said helplessly. When he saw Nick Fury's eyes that seemed to be about to kill, Fitz muttered in a low voice, I didn't know that the metal weighed a ton, and this instrument can withstand more than 900 weights, isn't it also very good? Nick Fury called out Fitz's name, and then said coldly, your laboratory funding for this quarter is gone. If you still want to allocate money, then give me this metal to study. Okay. Fitz did not refuse, and quickly began to study the metal mithril. During this time, Nick Fury and Peter Parker got acquainted with S.H.I.E.L.D., and by the time they returned a few hours later, Fitz's research progress was almost over. Under the detection of S.H.I.E.L.D., the world's most advanced instruments, all the relevant information of mithril has been aggregated into a supercomputer. You're efficient, and this quarter's grant can give you 50%. Nick Fury recovered half of the allocation, and then quickly drew everyone's attention to mithril. What's so strange about this thing, you can tell me instead of the computer. Hearing the order, Fitz walked to mithril with a look of excitement and introduced, the metal density of this mithril is very high, which is why he looks like hundreds of pounds, but it weighs a ton. And the high density means that the weight of mithril is very heavy, and the texture is very hard, it's like vibranium. With an introduction, Fitz picked up a piece of vibranium and showed it to Nick Fury and Peter Parker. Similar to vibranium. Nick Fury raised his eyebrows, realizing the value of this mithril silver. Vibranium has a hard texture and high scientific research value, and when used to make weapons and equipment, it is simply an artifact-level existence. The captain's shield is made of vibranium. According to some information about Stark Edward, the captain's shield could easily withstand the bombardment of anti-tank guns during World War II. You can see the horror of vibranium. It's not just the hardness of vibranium, it's also something more powerful. Fitz removed a piece of mithril with a high-energy laser, put it into an instrument used to adjust the metal form, and fiddled with it on the console. The first is to use a high-energy laser inside the instrument to melt mithril to a state of near melting. Then under the gaze of Peter Parker and Nick Fury, mithril is like a piece of plasticine, which is disassembled, combined, and transformed into various shapes. Whether it's a humanoid, a sword, or a brick. Anyway, this mithril is at the mercy of any form. Ductility is so good. Peter Parker saw the doorway and said stunned. Inside the instrument, mithril exhibits plasticity far beyond vibranium. It's just that the change form is nothing, and when it's used to build something, you can know what this plasticity represents. It has more possibilities than vibranium. Plasticity, excellent ductility, that's the great thing about mithril, that it can be applied anywhere, we can even turn it into a liquid. After the demonstration, Fitz stopped operating the instrument and explained a sentence. Inside the instrument, the mithril immediately lost its heat and gradually turned into a piece of incomparably hard metal. This thing can create a set of armor, absolutely invincible. Peter Parker sighed. Invincible. See the high-energy laser inside that instrument. Under the light, mithril is like a lump of mud. Do you think this thing can be used to craft armor? Nick Fury said with a smile. He is a combat expert, and he doesn't need a little data. He can expect what will happen when this armor made of mithril faces high IQ criminals like Dr. Octopus and Dr. Jackal. Undoubtedly, first they will be beaten by the armor made of mithril silver, then they will find mithril weaknesses in a short time, and then they will develop targeted weapons. Nick Fury could even imagine how Peter Parker, wearing mithril armor, would look when he was melted by the ray weapon that Dr. Octopus was holding. No, high-energy lasers can indeed melt mithril silver, but the inside of the instrument is in a completely vacuum state, which creates excellent conditions for smelting mithril silver. Moreover, the high-energy laser is not a pure laser, but a very energetic ray, but it looks like a laser, and it can melt mithril because of the particularity of the ray. Fitz explained. Then, he kicked the instrument and added, this thing doesn't look big, but below is a 6-story reactor for energy, so it can't be miniaturized. And, unless Parker is a fool, he won't walk into a vacuum and be hit directly by a high-energy ray powered by a 6-story reactor. After saying these words, Fitz closed his mouth and quietly observed the somewhat embarrassed Nick Fury. I think S.H.I.E.L.D. should set up a department dedicated to the education of scientific knowledge to Director Fury. Peter Parker laughed and mocked. Ahem. Nick Fury gave Peter Parker a blank look and said to Fitz, even if mithril is powerful. This thing is very valuable, and it is a waste to give this guy to use to create armor. You don't have to worry about this, there is very little mithril and it can't be made into armor. Fitz said truthfully, paused, and continued, but it's still okay to use it to forge a weapon. Then use it to match the light cannon to create a piece of equipment. Nick Fury commanded. The use of mithril was thus decided. Then Nick Fury and Peter Parker left the research room and went to the basement level of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a dormitory area. What are you bringing me here for? I still have school to attend, I still have Aunt May, I still have Gwen. I don't want to spend my whole life in jail here. Peter Parker showed resistance to these dormitories and simply refused to stay here. Don't worry, this is just a place for you, whether you live or not. Nick Fury said nonchalantly, then arranged a place for Peter Parker, threw the identity card to him, and walked away by himself. Weird. Glancing at Fury's back, Parker closed the dormitory door. Whether he wants to live here or not, he must stay here for the night today. When Peter Parker made the futon on the bed and lay down to rest, as soon as he closed his eyes, he saw a line of writing in front of him. Who is Dr. Lizard? A. Mary Jane. B. Gwen. C. Nick Fury. D. Connors. Get the reward for a correct answer. Spider-Man Gene Sequence Enhancement. Seeing these four options, Peter Parker sat up from the bed, and after opening his eyes, he found that the handwriting was still there. Moreover, his ears remembered the sound of the multiple-choice question. What the hell is going on here? Peter Parker frowned, doubts in his mind. But doubt to doubt, as long as this multiple-choice question is done correctly, the relevant reward will definitely not be less, so it is still necessary to do it. Exclude Nick Fury first. Peter Parker knocked out option C directly. The reason is simple. Who is Dr. Lizard? Although the title of this song is extremely abstract and a bit of a preamble, the main thing is that this is a doctor in the first place. Nick Fury's understanding of science cannot be said to be completely unaware, but the relevant research has not been mixed at all. So, he eliminated directly. Secondly, Mary Jane is also eliminated. Peter Parker once again made up his mind. Although Mary Jane is a classmate with him, this woman Peter Parker knows better, and it is completely impossible to become a doctor. Especially what Dr. Lizard. So it was also eliminated. At this point, only Connors and Gwen remained. Of course not Gwen. Peter Parker vetoed the closest person and then his gaze fell on the three words Connors. Professor Connors, muttered Parker, rubbing his chin in an attempt to spot something suspicious about this teacher. Professor Connors is a biology professor who bred a mutant spider for Osborn technology, the same mutant spider that bit Peter Parker. Parker knows this, too. It stands to reason that Dr. Lizard's biologically related choice is almost certainly Connors is right, but Parker still can't connect Connors with the four words Dr. Lizard. Dr. Lizard, Dr. Octopus, Dr. Jackal. Anyway, this kind of doctor is preceded by an animal, which is 100% not a fuel-saving lamp. But Professor Connors is a good man, gentle and responsive, and will answer the phone calls of students asking questions, no matter how late it is. How can such a person be a bad person? But the question is, what can you do if you don't believe it? That's all for. It can't always be Gwen, right? Pick D. Peter Parker tentatively said the answer. Congratulations on making the right choice. When the prompt sounded, Peter Parker never expected that he had chosen the right one. Next, Spider-Man's genetic sequence enhances this reward cache. Peter Parker only felt that his eyes were hot like fire, followed by a burst of dizziness, and when he woke up again, the joint part of his hand was covered with 2 layers of skin that could be opened and closed. When the skin is opened, small holes under the joints are exposed, and a highly viscous substance can be ejected from the small holes, just like spider silk. From now on, I don't need to use spider silk launchers. Peter Parker looked at his body changes in amazement. He tried it. The spider silk in his body is more viscous, more malleable, and very tough. This is much better than the spider silk launcher of your own making. Although shooting spider silk becomes the ability that comes with the body. But Peter Parker was still not happy, and even a little sad. Why did Professor Connors become Dr. Lizard? With such doubts, Peter Parker sat on the bed, unable to sleep. It seemed to feel the deep doubt in his heart, and finally Peter Parker's eyes froze, just like when he finished the multiple choice question for the first time, and entered an illusory state. In this state, he can see an image of the future. Shady sewers. There was a thick stench in the air. Peter Parker walks uncontrollably in the sewers while he finds himself wearing a battle suit. Anyone? Parker shouted. No one answered, his voice was heard far away by the sewers, and finally only a crackling sound sounded. After walking some distance, Peter Parker looked upwards. I saw there, a green humanoid lizard, hovering above, staring at Peter Parker with gloomy eyes. This look. Peter Parker sensed something, but when he wanted to continue to see clearly, he was pulled back to reality by a sense of vertigo. But no need to look any further. The look in Dr. Lizard's eyes just now had already made Peter Parker realize that he was definitely Professor Connors, and there was no accident. Because that gloomy look would only be revealed when Professor Connors was alone. Peter Parker once saw it. However, although it has been confirmed that Connors is Dr. Lizard, and this lizard doctor can also be imagined, it will pose a great threat in the future. But Peter Parker hesitated to tell Nick Fury. Told that, with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D., it is very easy to capture Connors. But Connors will also lose the qualification to survive and be directly killed by Nick Fury. If you don't tell it, you will be dangerous in the past. After some intense deliberation, Peter Parker finally decided not to tell Nick Fury. He himself has a way to solve this matter. Next, Peter Parker got up early to leave S.H.I.E.L.D. While leaving, Nick Fury was chatting with Agent Hill with a sandwich in his hand when he happened to see Peter Parker. Hey Parker, I'll take you to S.H.I.E.L.D., I'll personally drive you back in a while. After all, you are still a good child, and you don't return home at night without your Aunt May's permission, and you always need a reason to explain. Nick Fury said with a slight mockery. No need. Peter Parker didn't have a reason, so he directly rejected Nick Fury's kindness and quickly left S.H.I.E.L.D. Seeing him leave, Nick Fury and Hill looked at each other, and the tacit understanding in their hearts was that they knew what to do. Follow Peter Parker right now and see where he goes next. Nick Fury commanded. At this time, Hill had already operated the equipment and began to locate Peter Parker. However, although the two have a tacit understanding, others do not understand it very well. Why track Parker? Someone asked. The look of this guy rejecting me just now is not very natural. I can see at a glance that he must be hiding something from me. Less nonsense, and act quickly. Nick Fury commanded. He was a little worried, afraid that Peter Parker would make things serious to the point of getting out of hand. Morning. Midtown High School. Peter Parker came late in order to explain to Aunt May why he didn't return at night, and by this time, the other students were already sitting in the classroom. The corridors inside the high school were empty. Professor Connors, let me see why you became Dr. Lizard. Peter Parker muttered to himself and walked down a corridor to Professor Connors' office. Connors at this time was Peter Parker's biology teacher. Opened the drawer and rummaged through the package. Eventually Parker found several photographs, as well as a notebook. Above the photo, Connors looks in a military uniform. At that time, Connors had not yet lost his arm. He was a military doctor, and if there was no later war, Connors would have lived a good life like a normal person. Tragic. Peter Parker didn't think much about it, put the photo back in its place, and then opened the notebook. I don't know if I don't look, but I'm shocked when I see it. The content on this notebook turned out to be a scientific formula, mainly a research lizard. Moreover, there is also a respect for the lizard's regenerative ability. At the end of the notebook, Connors left a paragraph saying that he was about to make serum, which would be injected to make his broken arm grow back. No wonder. Peter Parker put down his notebook in amazement and glanced at Connors' picture. He only now knows why Connors turned into Dr. Lizard. There is no doubt that it is because of this amiable teacher. In order to grow his arms again, he has become like a normal person. But it's too risky. What you saw in the prophetic image after the multiple choice question was what Connors looked like when he turned into Dr. Lizard. Serum cannot be said to have no effect, but the side effects are too great. Just as Peter Parker was trying to stop Connors, the office door suddenly opened. Isn't this our friendly neighbor Spider-Man? Connors smiled and walked into the office, said hello, and hung his coat on a hanger. In this universe, Spider-Man's identity was revealed too quickly, and some things happened ahead of time, so Connors already knew Peter Parker's identity. Hello Professor Connors. Ah. I'm fine, I just came over with some questions I want to ask. Parker said in a wistful manner, trying to pretend to be normal so that Connors wouldn't suspect him. But when Connors saw the picture on the table in his note, which he had flipped through hundreds of times, he immediately understood what was happening. Parker, you're late. Connors swung his recovered right arm towards Peter Parker. Professor, you. Seeing the complete arm, Parker was extremely surprised, and he was speechless for a while, and he squeezed for a long time without saying a complete word. I have used the serum, there are no side effects, I am recovering well, as you can see, my arm has grown. As he spoke, Connors looked excited and proud. It seemed normal that he was the same Connors he used to be. There is nothing strange at all. So, on the contrary, Peter Parker is a little skeptical of life. He muttered to himself, could it be that what I see is fake? Isn't this normal, Professor Connors? Quote. As you can see, I'm really normal. Professor Connors said with a smile, and then he looked at Peter Parker's muscles, recalled his experience, and said, I'm different from you, the serum I developed works very well, and it doesn't bring me any special abilities. That's good. Peter Parker breathed a sigh of relief. In his opinion, superpowers are not a bad thing. If Connors can get the lizard's ability, turn into a lizard man or something, and follow him Peter Parker to get rid of the riot, that's good. But the problem is that the serum developed by Connors alone may not be able to have an accurate effect. What if Connors integrated the lizard's abilities, and the lizard's cold-blooded and tyrannical? Then he is likely to become a heinous criminal. Killing people everywhere, eating animals raw. But now Connors looks pretty normal, and that's good. Then I'll go, Professor Connors. With nothing else, Peter Parker bowed slightly and said goodbye to Connors. He then turned and left the office and went back down the hallway, ready to go to Nick Fury and ask him to investigate the matter. After all, Connors was also certified by that magical choice anyway, and it must be Dr. Lizard. If you can tell Nick Fury earlier, then Parker can also supervise in the follow-up. Don't let Fury kill Connors, he has a way to get Connors back to normal. But just as Peter Parker began to move down the corridor, the spider-sense suddenly noticed the abnormality around him. Who is it? Peter Parker was a stirring spirit, quickly observing the surroundings. In the next second, in the wall beside him, a green muscular arm came out through the wall and grabbed Parker's head directly. The green arms looked full of muscles, claws and terrifying claws, and you could think about it with your toes to see what it would be like if you were caught. Fortunately, Peter Parker was prepared and dodged quickly. But as soon as he flashed backwards, the wall beside him had completely shattered, and a big green guy crashed through the wall and flew up and kicked Peter Parker's abdomen. This kick is strong. And very quickly, when the spider sensed a reaction, Peter Parker had already been kicked. Parker's whole body flew backwards, directly crashed through the wall behind him, and flew into the classroom. Bang! The podium was smashed to pieces by Parker. This sudden situation made everyone in the classroom stunned. And after reacting, the former nemesis, now a good fan Lightning Thompson, immediately shouted, "It's my good brother Parker." Hello guys, but now is not the time to make friends, you guys. Spider-Man greeted habitually, trying to evacuate the people in the classroom. But as he spoke, the ground trembled, and the big green guy rushed into the teacher and directly knocked Spider-Man out again. I was stunned for another while. The students and the green monster looked at each other for a moment. What the students saw was a terrifying green lizard. What the lizard saw was a group of stupid students, and he burst into a roar, frightening all these students and snatching them out. Then, he swaggered along the hole that Parker had just smashed and chased after him. Peter Parker. The green lizard made a somewhat indistinct human voice, and he walked towards Parker, who was lying on the ground, and said as he went, I have to say that you are an extremely intelligent guy, I wonder, how did you find me? Don't ask me, I'm more strange than you are about that magical multiple choice question. As Peter Parker spoke, a carp rolled over and ejected 2 strands of spider silk at Dr. Lizard. These 2 strands of spider silk are naturally produced in his body after his genetic enhancement. The viscosity is much higher than that of previous technological creations. But if it is used to stick to criminals, it must be quite powerful, and the problem is that Peter Parker in front of him is not facing criminals, but Dr. Connors the Lizard. It doesn't matter, As long as I kill you, no one will know who I am. Connors muttered, stretched out his right hand and swept it, deliberately blocking the spider silk sprayed by Spider-Man, and gathered it all into one hand. Then, the claw of his left hand grew nails as sharp as a blade, and the right arm bound by spider silk was directly cut off. In the next second, the right arm quickly recovered. It seems that you have indeed acquired a very strong ability. Peter Parker said. There are stronger ones. With that, Connors sprinted forward and fought Peter Parker. The battle between the two was very sudden. But it's not without reason. Connors is no longer a normal person, he injected his scientific research results and turned into a large lizard, and he could not control the instinct of cold-blooded animals and committed crimes. It also made him feel that killing was a good solution to the problem. Now, he wants to practice this idea on Peter Parker. As long as he kills Parker, no one will know that he was injected with lizard serum. After a fight, Peter Parker figured out Connors' fighting style. Coupled with his original strength, he gained the upper hand within a few rounds, punching and kicking Connors backwards one after another. But at this moment, Connors punched Peter Parker's abdomen. In the middle of the attack, the entire arm suddenly fell off, which caused Peter Parker to remain defensive and had no time to protect other places. Then, Connors, who had regrown his arm, directly reversed the direction of his attack and easily buckled Peter Parker's neck. Bang! Parker was slammed to the ground, and the floor tiles under him were all cracked. I have tasted the flesh and blood of the living, and now I will taste your superhuman too. Connors looked bloodthirsty, his eyes were cold and tyrannical, and a large mouth bit towards Peter Parker's head. At this moment, a bottle of wine that had been drunk fell on Connors's body. The latter raised his head and looked, only to see a bald man picking up 2 bottles at random and smashing them towards him. Are you kidding me? Connors looked at the approaching bald man with a look of contempt. Parker also saw the person who came over, it was Nick Fury. What kind of skill is bullying a boy, Mama Fack? Nick Fury calmly approached Connors, his face fearless. After he reached the closest distance, he pulled his right hand behind him, took out a black weapon, and aimed it at Connors. In the next second, the trigger was pulled, and a half-human tall ball of light converged at the front end of the weapon, knocking Connors directly into the sky and exploding in midair. After solving Connors, Nick Fury walked up to Peter Parker and said dissatisfied, "If it weren't for my extra heart, you would definitely die here today." Quote. Who would have thought he would suddenly attack? Peter Parker casually made an excuse, reached out and took Nick Fury's hand, and got up from the ground. Then he looked into the air and around for the first time, and then asked, "Is Professor Connors dead?" Hearing this, Nick Fury raised his eyebrows, thinking that you guy knows who that green-skinned guy is, but you still don't tell me, it's really a headache. But now that it had come to this point, Nick Fury, who was an agent, didn't bother to talk nonsense with Peter Parker, and he immediately began to search around. Eventually, the two worked together and found a bunch of green things in the northern corner of the school playground. It's a pile of blood, as well as minced meat. Obviously, Connors was directly beaten apart after being hit by the light cannon, which shows the powerful reward given by this magical multiple-choice question. I didn't find the big lizard's head in this pile of rotten meat, so I'm sure he ran away. Nick Fury looked at the minced meat and said indifferently, as if he was looking at something unimportant. Apparently yes, there is a sewer here. Peter Parker said, pointing to the sewer bars that had been lifted on the ground. It can now be fully proved that Connors was not killed by the light cannon, but fled directly along the sewers. Connors is a dangerous character. Just a few minutes ago, Peter Parker was still communicating with him in a friendly manner, but after that, Connors suddenly wanted to kill someone. With such a violent temperament, it is difficult to guarantee that after he escapes, he will not hurt others. Parker, because of your stupid decision, someone might get hurt by that big lizard. Nick Fury glanced at Peter Parker coldly, and then took out the communicator as he walked, and ordered, immediately block the entrance and exit of every sewer near Midtown High School. I know that from now on I will patrol the neighborhood to make sure no one gets hurt by Connors. Peter Parker said with some self-reproach. Afterwards, he began to put on his battle suit and prepare for a protracted battle. Nonsense, otherwise you can still go to the house and lie down, ma mess with Fack. Nick Fury scolded very unceremoniously, turned around and left. Watching Maha Fark leave, Peter Parker frowned, full of remorse for his reckless actions today. What if he didn't act on his own in the first place, but told Nick Fury about it? That Connors may be hit by shield thunder means and may die. However, no one else will be harmed by Connors. I have to stop him immediately. Parker said to himself, and immediately wanted to quickly leave Midtown High School with Spider Silk. But at this moment, Nick Fury, who was walking in two different directions, and Peter Parker were suddenly stunned, and after reacting, they turned around and looked at each other. Did you see the title just now? The two asked at the same time. No doubt they all saw it. No matter what purpose the two of them have now, they must put it aside for the time being and complete the multiple choice question that appears in front of them together. In the Avengers, why can the Zeteri invade Earth? A. Because of the Infinity Stones. B. Because of Loki. C. Because of Tony Stark. D. Because of the Cosmic Cube. Choose success, reward, anti-Hulk armor design. Selection fails, deduction of 10 years of life. Seeing this topic, Peter Parker frowned, without the slightest clue. Whether it's Loki, the Infinity Stones, Stark, or any Rubik's Cube, Peter Parker doesn't know any of them, so he can't use even the most basic elimination. If you have to do this question, you can only use a 25% chance to try your luck. Win, get the blueprints. Lose, live 10 years less. I can't help it, or you will choose. Peter Parker said to Nick Fury. After saying this, he didn't hear Nick Fury's response, which made Parker a little strange and looked at the SHIELD director next to him. At this time, Nick Fury simply wrote the word of shock on his face. Peter Parker wasn't stupid, and after a little thought, he figured out why. You know a lot about the terms in this subject. No. I don't know anything. Fury chose to hide it. But he thought that Parker was also a member of SHIELD after all, and if he wanted to act next, Parker's help was naturally indispensable. So, Nick Fury explained, well, I know, the Avengers project is a top-secret plan. There are no more than 5 people on this planet who know, and you are one of them, you know. Of course. Peter Parker nodded. He and Nick Fury met because he found himself and allowed him to join the Avengers. Then there's Tony Stark. This guy is arrogant, the ruler of Stark Industries, and Iron Man. Nick Fury said quietly. It can be heard that he is very hesitant to say the identity of Iron Man. Is it Tony Stark? Peter Parker looked shocked. He's also watched TV and knows which Iron Man who has been covered by the media has suddenly appeared and traveled around the world to punish the terrorists. But the information you know is limited to that. Who else but Stark can make an armor flying in the sky? Nick Fury said a little helplessly, and then he remembered something and added, even if I don't tell you, you'll know after a while that this guy is going to reveal his identity when he wants to develop the cloth. So it is. Peter Parker nodded, and then set his eyes on the last option, which was the Cosmic Cube. He asked, what the hell is the Cosmic Rubik's Cube? It can't be this thing that made the Chitauri people call, right? And there is also the question, which is what are the Zeteri people? Why did they invade Earth? What kind of super alien civilization? A series of questions were thrown out by Peter Parker, and Nick Fury was very big to hear. What the Zeteri are, no one knows. And this Cosmic Cube, SHIELD has understood, but it is not very clear. The Cosmic Cube. This is a long ago archive that says it was about Steve, Captain Rogers, fighting the Third Reich and snatching it from a guy named Red Skull. Then Captain Steve's plane fell into the sea, when Stark's father, Howard Stark, took people to look for it, but instead of finding Steve, he found a blue cube. This thing is the Cosmic Cube. Nick Fury explained the ins and outs of the Cosmic Rubik's Cube clearly, so that Peter Parker, a smart person, could deduce what is the correct answer based on these conditions. The Cosmic Cube. This is indeed possible. Peter Parker frowned. In his opinion, this mysterious thing will always attract some malicious pretenders. But this does not mean that the Cosmic Cube is the right answer. After all, the topic is why it can invade the Earth, not for what. Whether it's the Loki option that doesn't know what it means, or the first answer Infinity Stones, there's a good possibility. By the way, I forgot to tell you that the Cosmic Cube contains great energy, and according to Howard's research, this Rubik's Cube may be able to use some means to stimulate wormholes. Nick Fury added. That's mostly the Cosmic Cube. Peter Parker said with a solemn face. At present, except for the cosmic cube, there is not enough information to argue for other answers. And if it's not the cosmic cube, then not really. In any case, this multiple choice question is a must. I choose D, cosmic cube. Parker gave the answer. Then, the multiple choice question immediately changed, and a thick design drawing fell into Parker's hand. Answer correctly. Phew. Nick Fury let out a long sigh of relief, glad that the two of them were able to choose the correct answer. Then, as usual, after getting the correct answer, a picture will appear as if you were in it. This time too, Nick Fury and Peter Parker find that their surroundings are changing, and in the blink of an eye, they arrive in the center of New York. Above the sky, a huge whirlpool swirled above everyone's heads. Immediately after, a fish-shaped armored spaceship appeared from the whirlpool, and behind the spacecraft, a dense array of small flying machines. These flying machines carrying alien soldiers fly around, destroying everything in New York City. Even people, they don't let go. Alien invasion. This is troublesome. Looking at the mess in front of him, Nick Fury frowned, deeply worried about the future of the Earth. But just when everything was about to get out of hand, several figures appeared in front of the two. Standing in the middle is Iron Man Tony Stark, and the rest are Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk. The rest of the people with the hammer don't know each other at all. What are these people doing? Peter Parker asked. This is the Avengers. It seems that my ability is good, and I will finally complete the task of assembling the Avengers in the future. Nick Fury said a little proudly. In the next second, everything around disappeared, and the two reappeared on the playground of Midtown High School. The multiple choice matter was completely over, and Peter Parker felt that he should go to Connors for now, so he wanted to leave. Don't go, I don't think the big lizard will come out for a while, we have to go to Stark now. Nick Fury stopped Parker, saw that he was reluctant to follow, and said, don't worry, Stark has a way to catch that big lizard, as long as he can join us, everything can be said. Quote. Okay. Peter Parker nodded, and finally got into Nick Fury's car, and the two drove towards Stark Industries together. Half an hour later. The top floor of Stark Industries. Jarvis, adjust the parameters, there seems to be something wrong with the jet device of this armor. With the help of Jarvis, Stark is adjusting his armor to make him more suitable for combat. However, instead of debugging as usual upon receiving the order, Jarvis reminded, Sir, perhaps you should notice the two of them. Hearing this, Stark, who was addicted to the armor, turned around, only to see Nick Fury and Peter Parker who swaggered in through the main entrance. Who are you? Stark looked very calm, and slowly put on the arm of the armor. In the next second, the laser cannon in the center of the Warframe hand was ready, and it could beat two uninvited guests into powder at any time. I'm S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury, this is Peter Parker, you two should have a common language. Nick Fury introduced. Hello, Stark, can you sign me? As a high school student, Parker still admires Iron Man, and when he can see a real person at this time, he naturally can't help but want an autograph. You bypassed my security system of 1,400 security personnel and 5 billion knives to come here just to ask me for an autograph. Stark smiled disdainfully, pointed his arm at Nick Fury, and said coldly, tell me your purpose, or I will be on the defensive. Hearing this, a look of displeasure appeared on Nick Fury's face. Obviously, this Tony Stark in front of him is very difficult to deal with, and he is a difficult person. But in order to be able to resist the invasion of the Zeteri in the future, and to prepare in advance to reduce losses, this arrogant guy had to be pulled into the group. After taking a deep breath, Nick Fury said, I am from S.H.I.E.L.D., I have long known that you are Iron Man, and now I am here to let you join the Avengers and fight for humanity. Quote. Fighting for humanity. Stark laughed, as if he had heard some joke, and covered his stomach and laughed for a long time before saying, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not a good name to hear, and it is also fighting for humans, are you sure it is not fighting for the interests of the right guests? Saying that, looking at the slightly dissatisfied Nick Fury, Stark didn't care and continued, what do you want me to do? Go to the Middle East to get rid of the leader of the hostile forces, or fly to a civilian area and bomb that place for the benefit of the United States? Hearing these words, Nick Fury gave Stark a blank look. He knew that this guy was thinking wrong. Stark has closed the company's arms business, and he no longer wants to let his weapons hurt ordinary people for the sake of a little profit. So Stark naturally believes that SHIELD is an ordinary security department, similar to the CIA, which will make him do some dirty things after joining. But this is not the case. We are not loyal to anyone, our mission is to protect all of humanity against supernatural monsters, scientific madmen, or aliens. Nick Fury explained very seriously. But he is so serious, on the contrary, it gives people an unexpected and ridiculous feeling. Haha, supernatural monster. Alien. Stark smiled and pointed to the door. If you want to make a movie, go to the 25th floor. We Stark Industries are interested in developing the entertainment business recently, and we are looking for a director who makes science fiction films. With this answer, Nick Fury knew that Stark could not be easily persuaded by himself. But not without way. I have a design drawing of the Warframe here. If you join us, I will give him to you, otherwise we will leave. Nick Fury said, unfolding the design of the anti-Hulk armor for Stark to see. When the design of the anti-Hulk armor was revealed, Stark was immediately stunned. He didn't expect that SHIELD had such a deep research on himself, not only knowing that he was Iron Man, but also knowing that he had an arc reactor on his chest. So much so that this Nick Fury, that is, the design drawing presented by the director of SHIELD, actually left a space to accommodate the arc reactor inside the anti-Hulk armor. This position, which happens to be the position of the reactor on Stark's chest, is exactly the same. Did you measure me with a ruler while I was stripped naked and sleeping? Stark looked at Nick Fury with a hard time, and felt more and more that this SHIELD was not quite right. If there is a top talent in SHIELD and designs anti-Hulk armor for him, it will not be accurate to detailed data such as height and weight, right? There is no other way to obtain data than direct measurement. I gotta say. In short, Mr. Stark, in short, you will have a chance to know the origin of this blueprint. Nick Fury spread his hands. Things have come to this point, and Stark really needs this anti-Hulk armor, so he can only choose to agree. However, it is not an unconditional promise. In any case, I will not participate in military operations. Stark is on the right track. Don't worry, Mr. Stark, as I said, SHIELD does not serve the interests of the United States at all. Seeing that he finally moved, Nick Fury smiled and shook Stark's hand. At this point, Iron Man Tony Stark has completely joined SHIELD. But now that the Avengers have not yet been formed, Nick Fury plans to let Parker and Stark run in first. So he said, before the invasion of an alien civilization called the Chitauri, we also had one more thing, which was to deal with a large lizard. Speaking of which, Nick Fury showed Stark the footage he captured when he went to support Parker. It was a stout humanoid lizard, and when Nick Fury walked towards him, the lizard was trying to eat Peter Parker's head. What is it, an urban legend or a lizardman conspiracy theory? Stark looked at the picture of the lizardman, and his first reaction was that the source of this image must be some guy who feared that the world would not be chaotic. Neither, he's a professor who became this horrible guy because he injected himself with lizard serum. Nick Fury introduced it simply, and then said, I need you to make something that can detect where this guy is and capture it. It's simple. Stark glanced at Dr. Lizard, then shifted his gaze to the anti-Hulk armor. I will integrate the probe on the new armor, and when I finish manufacturing, we can go out and capture him. Hearing this, Nick Fury and Peter Parker looked at each other, and the two nodded in agreement and agreed. Then there's the scene where Fury and Parker watch, and Stark himself creates it with Jarvis. In the manufacturing process comparable to a movie, Nick Fury was surprised to find that Stark Industries had far more materials and equipment than SHIELD. Coupled with Stark's smart brain, and those extremely detailed design drawings, this originally very complex anti-Hulk armor took only half a day to manufacture almost everything. There's still something missing. Looking at this heavy anti-Hulk armor, Stark touched the back of his head and asked a question. I know you're missing a metal that you can use to craft armor, Stark, and I'm sincere, so I'll help you solve this problem. Nick Fury said this, took out the communicator from his pocket, and said to the other side, airlift the mithril over. Moments later, that ton of mithril was sent to Stark Industries. Stark was ecstatic and immediately applied mithril to the anti-Hulk armor. After everything was ready, without Nick Fury's order, Stark couldn't wait to rub his hands and urged, let's start capturing that big lizard. That's exactly what I mean. Nick Fury didn't refuse. Night. At the main entrance of the sewer in Queens, New York, Peter Parker put on a good suit and a communicator and entered the sewer directly. Parker, I'll command you next. That big lizard is 200 meters in front of you. You just need to walk there, and then drive the big lizard out. I will naturally catch it. Stark and others, who wear anti-Hulk armor, were at the exit and gave the order. Although the commander is still Nick Fury, he doesn't know how Stark's high-tech equipment is used, so he can only let Peter Parker do what Stark ordered. Anyway, as long as he can catch Dr. Lizard, everything else is not a problem. Okay, Mr. Stark, I'll go. Peter Parker nodded and used spider silk to quickly go deep into the sewers. After traveling 200 meters, he found that, as Stark had said, Connors was standing in the sewer in all directions, fiddling with something on a metal table. Seeing this, Peter Parker's first reaction was to think that Connors was fiddling with the potion that should be to restore himself to normal. But when he saw it clearly, he found that it was a lizard serum. Obviously, Connors wants to make all humans become lizards like him. Stop what you're doing. Peter Parker walked towards Connors, spewing out 2 cobwebs at the same time, covering Connors with the metal table. But for Connors, who is in a lizard state, these spider silks have no effect at all. Parker, you're a smart guy who can find this. Connors said coldly while tearing off the cobweb. Then he did not continue to entangle, and without waiting for Peter Parker to reply, he directly turned and left. This account went with Parker's wishes. 1 man and 1 lizard chased me in the sewer and quickly moved towards the exit. After chasing for a while, Connors came to the entrance of the sewers, and he immediately jumped out of the sewers with his strong athletic ability. But in the next second, a huge iron hand came from the side and directly grabbed Connors's head. I got you, little lizard. Stark laughed and cheered, and then threw Connors directly to the ground, controlling the huge fist of the anti-Hulk armor, and directed a rapid output at Connors. Just as it was about to be beaten into mud, another power grid was launched from his arm, completely enveloping Connors and immobilizing. Fortunately, I caught it. Peter Parker breathed a sigh of relief. You two are working well together, and this operation is very successful. Nick Fury on the side spoke, opened the trunk of the vehicle, and ordered, stuff this guy in, I'll bring it back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Connors was then stuffed into a car, shackled by the grid, and forcibly sent to S.H.I.E.L.D. Thanks for watching.